asked him to open our relationship, but what he did next left me regretting it. I don't know if I did wrong, really, but losing a person dear to you can make you rethink everything you've ever known. The questions keep running through my mind, and I just can't help but think maybe I was wrong. But how could I be? Hello, Reddit. My name's Joanne. For privacy's sake, I won't be using real names except for mine, and I am 24 years old. I have a boyfriend. Sorry. It's past tense now. He broke up with me. I wouldn't say broke up, though. More like he ghosted me. You wonder why he did that, right? He ghosted me after I just asked him to open our relationship. Crazy, right? Why am I writing this here? Because I'm confused and pained, and I regret asking, because maybe if I hadn't, we'd still be together. I don't know anything anymore. I mean, I've always known men who love to be in an open relationship. We'd both be free to do things we want, even inside the relationship, and I thought that was what all men preferred. So to say I was shocked when he did me like that is an understatement. I was, and still am, in love with Max, and I was really truly ready to get married to him, even against all my original beliefs. I have always had a belief that a committed relationship didn't ever last. My parents didn't, nor did my aunties and uncles. I grew up in a relatively large family with different step-aunt and step-uncle that my grandparents weren't exactly what you'd call faithful, as they were together, then separated for some years. Then they had different partners while separated, even had children with their partners before they had been said to have found love again. They gave birth to more kids, and those became my aunties and uncles. I never met them, but heard a lot of stories about them. My parents had met at a seminar and had kicked it off from there. My dad had wanted not to end up like his parents because of how many stepsisters and brothers he had. He had wanted to just be committed to his wife, my own mother, and he did try though. But then, when you have the genes of two people who were never exactly faithful, you tend to fall into that line, as eventually, he had a girlfriend who gave birth to 2 kids for him, my stepbrothers. Mom was livid after all the promises he made, and then he just went ahead to break them. She left my sisters and me with him and left. Dad got married again to the woman who got pregnant for him, but she also left when she found out that my dad wasn't faithful too. I could go on and give you examples not from another family, but mine. I have a pretty messed up family. I didn't want to have to end up like my grandparents or my parents, and most especially not my Aunt Martha. Hers was just the most painful and scary relationship. She's still stuck in prison for killing her husband, who cheated on her throughout their marriage with different women. She couldn't stand that, and she put a knife through him when they had a fight about it. I didn't want to become them, so I decided long before that even if I had any relationship, it would be an open relationship. I wanted not to be called a cheater, or to have become my Aunt Martha, because I didn't exactly know what my man was doing behind my back. I guess it's better to be safe than sorry. I would rather know all his partners or flings, but with the knowledge that I'm the main person. And he also the same. He would know all my partners aside from him, but he would be my main. It worked well with all my relationships. I had other guys I was seeing while with the person I loved. But I guess I should have realized that not even letting a man cheat on you could make him stay. I mean, I understand that now. Because why else did my other relationships not last? My first boyfriend when I was in college was Ryan. I loved Ryan, and when he asked me to be his girlfriend, I was happy. Ryan was the one guy I didn't ask for an open relationship with. I guess I wanted to test the waters, see whether he'd be faithful. But of course Ryan, despite all the love he claimed to have for me, didn't mind sleeping with my dorm mate behind my back. I broke up with him, and he begged me back, but I couldn't stand getting together with him again, so I moved on, and in my sophomore year, I met John. Oh, John was just the sweetest guy. But of course he was just like the rest. I did ask for an open relationship because I didn't want a repeat of what happened with Ryan, and he agreed. Now that I think about it as I write this, I realize he had probably agreed then because he wanted to accept any conditions just to date me. The relationship started out sweet and romantic. He would call me, take me to lunch when our classes weren't clashing. He would buy cute gifts and all. I was quite satisfied being with him, but I knew it was only a matter of time before he met someone else. So when I realized he wasn't going to start seeing someone else, I did that first. I told him about it, and he at first hid his anger and didn't want to show it, but when I continued seeing other people alongside, he became too possessive and aggressive, so much that I had to break it off with him. I didn't date anyone until after I was done with college. I started working as an editor for a publishing company. I won't mention the name for privacy's sake. It was everything I wanted, and I was very happy I got to work there. It was there I met Max. Max is a popular novelist, which is why I'm not using his real name. He's a unique writer, and his books always sell as one of the highest in every bookshop. So when he came to our company to edit his new book, imagine how excited I had been. He had said the former company he used wasn't up to his standard anymore, and of course he came for the best one, which is the company I worked at. And he had a very short deadline because he was having the book launched in a few weeks, so he needed to get that done fast enough. I was overexcited specifically when my boss told me I would be working with him directly on his new book. I worked harder than I have ever done because I wanted it to be perfect, and the fact that I was the first one to get a hold of his new book and read it, even edit it, made me feel special. Max, quite satisfied with the work I did within the short time, was very impressed with me and asked to take me to dinner after his book launch to celebrate. I had said yes, of course, but I didn't put my mind to it. I mean, he was a very known celebrity, and I'm sure he couldn't be seen hanging out around a mere editor like me. Sounds silly, I know, but that's really how I felt back then. No. He did keep to his promise, though, and took me out to dinner. I had a lot of fun that evening. Perhaps because he was a writer, words came easily to him, and conversations with him just flowed, and I found myself talking about things I generally don't talk about, especially on a first date. And I guess being an observer, too, must be one reason why his novels were so realistic. Because he observed literally everything about me, which had the temperature on my cheeks on a high rise. The evening came to an end, even though I didn't want it to, and he took me home with a promise to call me the next day if he could. He was such a gentleman, asking for permission to call me. I was blown away, and right there I kissed him. Yes, I initiated our first kiss, and I didn't even regret it afterward. He was an amazing kisser, and well, eventually, I invited him in, and we had sex. I know, but it was my first time ever having sex on a first date. I didn't do it with my other boyfriends. I guess I just realized that Max was just special, but I couldn't even keep him in the end. My relationship with Max was everything I could have asked for. He was kind, sweet, patient, charming, and we had the most amazing sex life. He was just so amazing, but that didn't remove the doubt in my heart that he would probably leave or let go of the relationship when he met someone new. But he made it so easy to trust him and rely on him that it was almost scary. Whenever we spoke, he'd talk about his future plans and would always involve me in them. He had no intentions of hiding our relationship, but I didn't want to be exposed to the public if eventually our relationship didn't work, so I asked him to keep it a secret. He had agreed just to make me happy. Though coworkers knew about our relationship, he didn't bother to hide the way he looked at me whenever he came around, or his unconscious habit of wrapping his hands around my waist. We were together for a few months, and I couldn't even ask for an open relationship because Max honestly was just everything I wanted, and I couldn't imagine actually relating with someone else as much as I did with Max. Well, that was until Alex came into the picture. Alex came into our company as an intern, and knowing that our company didn't accept interns at that time of the year, we were surprised. But that was until we found out that he was related to our CEO. I hadn't planned to cheat on Max with Alex, honestly. Originally, my plan was to ignore him because I knew that my job could easily be on the line if I got involved with him, and I couldn't risk it. I loved my job, and I loved working there, so ignoring him and minding my own business was easy. But then I was called up by the boss and requested to specially watch out for him. I was a bit surprised, but didn't show it. I mean, why me of all people? They sure knew that I wasn't exactly watching out material, but I did anyway. You know, a command is a command no matter how it was placed. He would come up to me for every question he had, At first, it felt good because I saw the eyes the ladies were giving him in the office, and it looked like they'd do anything to be in my position. Especially Bella. That girl was always on my ass, forgive the language. She was always trying to compete with me, and I was thankful for that because she made my work more challenging and made me appreciate my hard work. So, seeing Alex with me nearly all the time usually gets her in a mood. Well, so it made it easier to look like I was doing the watching out, but not until I noticed that I was getting too attached to him. At first, I disregarded it. I mean, I liked him as a person because he was fun, smart, challenging, and had some other attributes I love to see in a person just starting out. So I thought maybe it was why I felt the need to help through those phases. But it wasn't just that. I found myself looking forward to work, not just because I loved my job, but because I wanted to see a certain person. My wardrobe became too bland for work, and I started buying new clothes. At first, I had even managed to convince myself it wasn't because of him, but because I did need a change of clothes. But I realized soon enough that I was getting all dolled up because I was fishing for a compliment from him. It was a hard pill to swallow, and I often found myself wandering in thoughts, thinking about Alex's sexy smile, his abs that don't try to hide themselves in the clothes he wears, his perfume that smells like seduction, his eyes that just look like you could get lost in them any second, and even the way he snickers when he doesn't agree with something had begun to sound sexy to me. Max noticed my distant behavior and asked about it because I was starting to get distracted thinking about another someone while with him. I told him nothing and lied about work being a little extra. But I knew within myself that I was starting to compare Max and Alex, and that didn't make me feel good. I loved Max, and I didn't want anything to jeopardize what we had, but there was just something about Alex that I couldn't place my finger on. So on my own, in my mind, I decided to tune everything down by trying to limit the way we related and focus more on work and Max. And since Alex didn't know about my feelings, it wouldn't be that hard before I moved on. Yeah, I was totally wrong. My infatuation only grew more and more, and I started to get really frustrated with how things were going. Then Max had to go for a book tour. He wanted to take me along, but I couldn't leave my job or get a vacation impromptu, so he had to leave me behind for 2 months. Maybe sexual frustration became part of what was happening to me, because I became so highly sensitive that even his voice had my heart racing 1,000 miles per second. I tried so hard not to cheat on Max. Believe me, I really tried. But what convinced me, aside from my own overriding emotions, to be with Max was the fact that during his 2 months tour, I was so scared he was going to cheat on me. I mean, he had the whole 2 months to get serious with another girl he met on his trip and get her pregnant or get married to her, and then maybe come back home hoping I could be on the side. Call me paranoid, but those were my thoughts. And besides, that is the fact that his personal assistant was a woman, and she was very beautiful. So I didn't want to have to wait, sitting around while I got cheated on and regret being faithful while he wasn't. The affair didn't start almost immediately after Max left for his tour. It started a week before Max was supposed to come back. I was excited he was going to be back, but that didn't erase my doubts and worries. He called, yes, and was always updating me about what went on and was always telling me about how much he loved and missed me and couldn't wait to be back home with me. But I just didn't want to trust him, even if instinctively I knew I could. I didn't want to end up like everyone else did in my family, alone, heartbroken, and with plenty of kids with different father name tags. We're a tightly knitted family, but it didn't make me want their lifestyles. That day, the day it all began, I was in the office trying to finish up a work I was editing and was supposed to hand in the next day. Everybody else had left, but I couldn't leave, so I stayed back so I wouldn't have to submit a work I wasn't proud of. Well, Alex stayed back, and I didn't even know, honestly. Maybe if I had known, I would have just taken my work home to finish. But I was staying alone since Max wasn't back from his trip yet, so I thought it was no harm staying back to finish up before going home to crash. Alex had walked up to me and asked if he could help with my work. I had refused, of course. As much as I enjoyed company, I loved working alone to avoid distractions. He probably saw that I wasn't about to get into a conversation with him while working, and he left. Well, I thought he did. He only came back hours later when I was rounding up my work holding takeout food. It was dark outside now, and I was hungry, so I accepted the offer to eat together in the office's small tea room. We talked and talked about things we enjoyed doing and not doing, and other random stuff apart from work-related issues, until he had asked casually about my relationship. He had said, I remember, when is he back? And I was surprised that he knew about my relationship with Max. But then I remembered that he probably heard the news from someone in the office, so I shrugged it off and told him when Max was due to be back. He started asking me random questions about Max and me, and if I was truly happy in the relationship, and if I didn't have my head turned in another man's direction. I shouldn't have, I know, but I just couldn't help myself and reply, giving answers to his questions. And maybe it was the emotions I've had, or the food just had some drugs in it, because when he kissed me, I went along with it. I knew I was crazy when he kissed me the first time, and I responded eagerly, but I was probably a lot crazier when he invited me to spend every night with him at his place, just until Max came back. I shouldn't have agreed to do that, but my thoughts then were just fumbled, and I was just thinking, what if Max was doing the same where he was? I agreed. Don't blame me yet, I wasn't thinking clearly, or let me say I wasn't thinking with my head screwed on. But at that time, I just wanted to damn it all and get it all out of my system. A week with him was enough to get him out of my head, and my head and heart would be in the right place by the time Max was back, and then Alex would be out of my head and mind, and we had both agreed that everything wasn't going to last past a week. Well, that's what I thought, but I guess fate had a lot in store for me. That week, every night, I spent the night at Alex's place. We would talk about everything, even my relationship and all, eat, drink, and then have sex. Then I'd go over to my place in the morning, bathe, and get ready for work. Resume work and ignore Alex like nothing was between us. It was exciting, keeping it a secret between us, and no one even suspected a thing. Alex was crazy and would do crazy things like sneak into the female bathroom with me to make out, smack me while walking past me, or wink at me stylishly across the room. It was a big thrill for me, and I obviously wasn't thinking of anything else. That was until Max was back, and I knew my relationship with Alex had to end. I was devastated because I thought a week would get the whole thing out of my head, and I would become bored, but clearly not because every day was more exciting than the last. I was the one who picked Max up from the airport when he arrived. The night before that, I had been with Alex, and he had told me how sad he was to see our relationship end, as he hadn't gotten enough of me, which actually made two of us. Max had been so happy to see me, and honestly, I was happy to see him too. It wasn't until I saw him walking towards me with his luggage and a big goofy smile on his face that I realized how much I had missed him, though I knew that my week had been filled with thoughts of a different man. I really did love Max, and I didn't want to lose him, but I did care about Alex and loved how he made me feel, like I was playing a dangerous game and someone could actually get hurt. It was scary yet thrilling. Max was telling me all about his trip while I was driving us home, and I was just waiting for him to deliver the bomb to another woman he had, and how sorry he was to cheat on me. I would tell him I also did cheat on him, and we would both forgive ourselves and move on. That was me being delusional because Max never mentioned anything about another woman, even though I kept asking questions that would probably lead there. The only woman he did talk about was Mary, his mentor, who had come to surprise him on one of the shows where he had to talk about his book. I was happy and yet disappointed. That meant I was the only one who cheated and treated our relationship with levity, and that didn't sit well with me. I couldn't bring myself to tell him what I had done behind his back, so I kept quiet about it. When he asked me about work, I just kept my reply short, especially when he asked about the intern placed under my care. I froze and just muttered, "Fine." I had forgotten I told him about Alex during one of our late-night talks whenever he wasn't too tired and wanted to speak to me before going to bed. I quickly distracted him from my lack of response by asking another question about his book. Thankfully, he didn't suspect I wanted to change the topic. Maybe he did, but he didn't mention anything again and just answered my question and continued to tell me about how the tour went. The following week after Max returned was the hardest. Max was trying his hardest to make up for the time he was gone by doing the sweetest things, picking me up after work, surprising me with homemade food, or taking me to dinners and some little trips on weekends. It was sweet. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was I missed Alex. I couldn't even stare him properly in the eye in the office. I was so tense. I missed our thrilling relationship, and the fact that it was obvious that he did too made it harder. If he had maybe given off the "we had our fun and now it's over" vibe, then maybe it wouldn't have been so difficult to get over. But he went around in the office looking like someone going through a hard breakup, and it was hard watching. It was the day Mitchell, our producer, yelled at him for making a huge mistake that I knew how badly he was affected by our relationship. He had sent out unedited material to be printed out instead of the edited material. I knew I had to go see him, so when we finished up at work, I asked to speak to him, and we went together to his house. I had called and lied to Max earlier that I was going to be late because I had work to catch up on. We went over to his place, and I asked him why he was being so distracted at work when we both agreed to end the whole affair after a week. Well, to just say it briefly, we ended up having sex again that night, throwing precautions into the air. And so did we again the next day, and the one after that too. I was happy again, satisfied even. I had a good thing going with Max, and then my relationship with Alex was also... I don't have words to describe it, but as happy as I was with both of them, I was guilty. I felt I had to come clean with Max. I didn't want to do what my dad did to Mom to him. He had promised to be with her, yet ended up having an affair and got her pregnant with 2 kids before my mom found out. I believed then that if he had come out clean from the beginning, then maybe they wouldn't have had the problems that they had. So me not being honest with him right now, when I had promised myself transparency in any relationship, was unfair to Max. So I decided to tell him about my decision to have an open relationship. I loved him enough to want to get married to him and eventually even have his kids. But if I wasn't honest with him, I would just end up having the same relationship as my parents did. But that decision to tell him was unfortunately the worst decision I could have made. Well, 2 days prior to the night I was going to tell him, it was our anniversary. Our relationship was a year old, and of course I was planning something special, and I thought that might be the best time to tell him what I wanted to, as he would perhaps be open-minded. So as I said earlier, 2 days prior, I had booked the most expensive restaurant for us, bought a new dress and lingerie. Alex shopped them with me. I even asked specifically for the restaurant to prepare a cake with "Happy Anniversary" on it. It was going to be perfect. Or not. I was nervous, truly, but was confident that he loved me enough to want what I wanted. And then what man wouldn't like a free access card to cheat away even while in a serious relationship? But guess Max was not. So on that day I had to work and finished up early enough to make it in time to go home and dress up. I had even been able to squeeze in a shower. I had texted Max earlier that I was going to meet him at the restaurant, so when he saw me, he would be surprised and perhaps fall in love more. I arrived at the restaurant, and of course, Max was stunned by my look, complimented me even, and kissed me. We settled in, ordered our dinner, ate, and then the cake came. I was too full, so I just ate small bites, as did Max. Max then gave me the biggest surprise of my life by bringing out his new manuscript that he was working on, and showed me that it was dedicated to me. My name was written out in full, and he had written there that he loved and appreciated me and couldn't wait to be together forever. It was his way of showing me that he was ready to go public with our relationship and that I wasn't just a girl in his backstory. I was the main deal. He was promising a future together. It meant so much to me because those words, beautifully written, seemed to come from the heart, and I couldn't have wanted anything more. I remember crying and Max kissing my tears away. It really was the sweetest moment, and I couldn't spoil that moment with my own announcement, so I decided to wait till we were back in the house. We got back to the house and slept together. It really was amazing, and that honestly somehow did clear all my doubts about him two-timing. But which wouldn't be appropriate if he didn't get to know that. Despite knowing that he wasn't cheating on me, I still couldn't predict the future and tell whether there's someone else going to be there when we were fully committed. It was better to know your partner's partner than to be caught unaware, if that makes sense. So while we lay in each other's arms that night, I told him I had something to say, and he adjusted to face me. I stammered, but I eventually came out with everything, from my parents' relationship to the doubts I had about him, to Alex and I, and to wanting an open relationship. Max at first just looked at me without an expression. Then he withdrew his hands from my body and stood up from the bed. I started to get scared, not knowing what to expect from his silent reaction. I didn't know what to expect, but I honestly hadn't expected that silent reaction. If it had been anger or sadness, or maybe anything else to show his emotions that night, it would have been better. He just stood there staring outside our window and said nothing. When I eventually found my voice and begged him to say something, he ignored me and still continued staring outside the window for the whole 30 minutes. He just later walked out of the room, and I heard the study door open and bang closed. I had no sleep that night, wondering what might be going through his head. At the crack of dawn, I went straight to the study room and knocked, but there was no answer. I waited for a while before the door cracked open, and he came outside, looked at me, and just smiled. He even kissed me on my forehead, and I thought everything was fine with us. I thought maybe he was cool with it, and I heaved a sigh of relief. The next day, after that day, he told me he had to travel for an emergency work call and didn't explain further, but just promised to be back by the next day. Sadly, that next day has not come, and now it's already been 2 months. I texted, called him, and everyone else I knew who could talk to Max, but no one seemed to be able to reach him. I thought everything between us was fine, and he had forgiven me and was cool with having an open relationship. I thought not giving him reasons to have to cheat behind my back was good. I'm so frustrated and sad. I cannot even get myself to get up these days because of how I'm feeling. I love Max, and I really do want to have a future with him. Please, what do you advise I do? I cannot bear the thought of losing him because of what I did. I know I created this mess myself, but I really, really do need help to get my man back. I don't think I can live without him. Please. Update. Hello, Reddit. I cannot explain fully how saddened and totally unhappy I feel at the moment. When I was writing this post, I felt like maybe someone out there would understand how I feel and why I made the choices I made, and maybe even give me some advice on how to set things right between Max and me. But so far, all I've received is abuse, and it's really affected my mental health and damaged it even more than it already was damaged. It's been a few weeks since I made the post, and I've actually had time to reflect on what I did wrong and how my actions affected Max. I know I'm just facing the consequences of my actions, and it's not particularly nice, I can tell you. And the comments too weren't exactly helpful. I've begun to doubt everything I've ever known, all the silly childhood promises I made to myself, so I wouldn't have to end up like my parents did. But eventually, I'm just like them. I might even say worse. I threw away the one good thing I had going with Max, and I will forever regret that. I wonder now, if I had been sincere with Max from the beginning, how it would have been. If I had told him about my insecurities in relationships, perhaps he would have helped me heal and trust him, and maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't be here making a regretful post. It's so disheartening how I just lost him, really. I don't know if words are enough to describe how I feel, really. Max quit working with our company because of me, and somehow my director thinks it's all my fault and threatens to fire me if I do not somehow do something and get Max to work again with our company. So I'm on the verge of losing my job. I can't even get a hold of him, let alone talk to him. I don't even have an inkling as to where he is or how he's doing. And for Alex, well, we're not together anymore. Once he realized that everything wasn't going so well for me, he dumped me too and has probably moved on to the next exciting thing. The way he ignores me even in the office hurts badly because I know he was one reason I lost my relationship. So I'm literally about to be jobless and also don't have any meaningful relationships in my life. My life is just perfect. I meant that sarcastically in case you didn't get that. Funny thing is, I cannot even bring myself to tell my family. They would never understand, as they themselves have not exactly had any meaningful relationships. I have literally no one to talk to except you guys. This is really hard on me. I know I'm depressed. I'm on the verge of losing it mentally, if I haven't already, that is. How do you get from having everything you've ever wanted to having nothing at all? I really regret losing Max. He was the best gift, and I just lost that because of my own foolishness. I do not even have anything, both the so-called open relationship and the committed one. Crazy how blinded you can be to one thing that should matter to you. And then when you lose it, you're seeing clearly. I mean, it's true what they say about not appreciating what you have until you lose it. I still cannot comprehend just how stupid I was to think I could do those things to Max and get away with them. The painful part is the new book he published. After fighting my way through a bunch of eager fans, I was able to get one for myself just to read the dedication. I was really expecting it, but that still wasn't enough to prepare my heart against the painful jab I felt when I read that even that had changed. He now dedicated it to his newfound relationship. I knew I hurt him, and I knew he would move on and find someone, but still, I didn't prepare my heart for the pain and torment it experienced, and I caused it by myself. I really am doomed. Update. Hey Reddit, this is my very last post here, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be able to express myself here. I was able to do that here like I could do with no other person. Thank you very much, guys, for reading my story despite all the negativity, which I know I actually deserve. I'm still glad I was able to express myself freely here. I'm making this last post here because I want to say something to Max. Max, if you're seeing this, which you probably might not, but if you do mistakenly come across this, I just want to let you know how sorry I am for the things I did to you. I know I'm a horrible person because you were an amazing partner anyone could wish for, and I took advantage of that. I should have been more honest and open with you and shouldn't have just gone ahead and cheated on you like that. I regret my actions so badly, and I don't expect you to forgive me because I myself cannot bring myself to forgive me, and I know I will continue to pay for my sins for the rest of my life. I hope you find the one person who would appreciate and love you the same way you did me, and wouldn't take you for granted like I did with you. I'm really sorry. Take care, guys, and don't ever make the same mistakes I did. Turns out, I'm not that cut out for being a mom and wife, to the point of my 8-year-old son outing my affair to my husband. Yeah, I know how bad that sounds. Today, I will tell you a story and a great example of unromanticized motherhood, because I in fact don't know what I'm doing. My name is Helen, I'm 35 and married to Peter, who is 2 years older than me. We've been married for 9 years and have 2 kids. Lucas is 8 and Lily is 5. I love my kids more than anything, and they definitely held my marriage with their father for a few years, but we got to an irreparable point, I guess. I met Peter when I was 25, married him the following year, and in the year after that, I got pregnant with Lucas. In 3 years, my life was set, everything was perfect, I had a job, a good husband, and a child we loved. That scenario was always my dream. Ever since I was a teenager, I dreamed about finding my soulmate and having kids with him. In my 20s, I still idealized being a mom. I read all the books and articles about it before I even got pregnant. I knew everything I needed to know to raise my kids until they became teenagers. I was in it for real, in marriage, in raising kids. I wanted that life more than anything. When I met Peter, I could see he was also for real. On our first date, he already revealed his wish to become a father. He was a perfect man, and I wasn't letting him go for nothing. He was always romantic and thoughtful, a great boyfriend, a great husband, and a great dad. Every year on my birthday, he plans a special 24 hours with a whole schedule. Every year on our anniversary, he takes me on a special trip. He helped with our wedding organization. He plans the kids' birthdays every year. He takes them to school, cooks for them, takes care of them when they are sick, and I am so proud to say we share all of our parents' duties. Literally every couple of friends with kids I know, who are pretty much our entire social circle, are on the edge of breaking because the husbands are selfish jerks who don't do anything for their children and leave their wives overloaded. That was never our case. Peter is the best father I've ever met, and I'm completely proud of him being the father of my kids. After Lucas was born, our family dynamic started, and things obviously changed. Our romance wasn't the same, but it didn't seem like a problem. We developed a routine together, and we loved living in it. I was happy, but my passion for Peter started getting lousy. We didn't have much action. When we did, it felt like an obligation, and not that we genuinely wanted to be there. Gladly, that came in our life usually in phases, very long phases, but at least they didn't last forever. We'd spent 3 months without touching each other, and 2 months being completely obsessed with each other, and even getting off work to sleep together without much sleeping. It was in one of those hot phases that I got pregnant with Lily. My general experience as a mom is really far away from what I idealized. The way I theoretically imagined I was going to raise my kids didn't happen at all practically. Kids are very hard, and they always do something you don't expect just to get you crazy. I'm sure my kids will have a lot to talk about me in therapy in their future, but I do my best, even if it's not really good. After I realized I wasn't the great mom I wanted to be, my fairy tale fantasy of being a mom and a wife died. It is frustrating seeing how so many women get used to that life so easily. Dealing with my kids is hard. Dealing with my husband is hard. And I feel like I don't fit in the story I personally wrote. It isn't fair. I love my kids. I know they love me too. But I feel like I could be doing more to them. I sometimes excuse behaviors they shouldn't have just so that I don't have to stress about it. I'm afraid that is screwing them up, but I don't know. Lucas and Lily are very different. My relationship with each one of them is very important for this story, so let me tell you about them. Starting with my oldest, Lucas. He was the sweetest baby ever, so cute and calm. I loved taking care of him. We were very connected during his first 3 years. He only asked for mommy and wanted to be with me all the time. After Lily was born, Lucas became a little jealous and got more attached to his dad. I struggled hard with newborn Lily. She was a very angry and crying baby. I almost got crazy during Lily's first months. I even started taking medication for anxiety and depression. I wasn't getting along with my daughter, and I missed carrying my son around everywhere with me. Back then, I could only think about how easier it was when Lucas was an only child. Peter always assured me Lucas was just going through a dad phase, but he would eventually go back to me. Turns out he never did. Lucas is a very smart kid. I think he has a more developed mind than all of his friends. He understands things kids his age and even older don't understand. He developed his intelligence very early. I guess that's why we kind of grew apart after I gave birth to Lily. He understood that our family was going to change with Lily, and I guess he felt hurt by that. I was never his favorite person again. When Lucas was 5, he discovered negotiation. He'd argue with me about everything until he got his way, but as I knew my son very well, I knew I could get him to do whatever I wanted if I offered him ice cream or money. I know it's wrong, a terrible thing to do as a parent, but the bribing didn't happen all the time. I started treating Lucas as an adult, like that coworker you don't get along so well, so you try to get them to do what you want by offering something that could benefit them. That is my relationship with my son. He was always very curious about the world, and I didn't have problems explaining it to him, unlike Peter, who wanted to protect them from even knowing about the evils of the world. I feel like Lucas only doesn't hate me because I talk to him like he isn't a kid. He likes being considered, since he is used to being doubted of his intelligence outside our home. Even so, he loves Peter more than he could ever love me. They play together, blow up things together, do experiments, watch movies, have a secret handshake and inside jokes. They are best friends, and even if it sounds immature, sometimes I'm jealous of that. When he was small, he wanted to be only with me all the time. After he grew up, when I invite him to do something with me, he asks if his dad can't go with us. When I say no, he simply sighs and acts like he is being forced. But Lily, God, Lily is my beautiful girl. Her annoying period was only in her first year. After that, she became the cutest thing ever. I found out how fun it was having a daughter. I can dress her up in all the ways possible, and she loves it always. No one can get between our connection. I feel bad for sort of having a favorite kid, but it isn't my fault if one of my kids loves me with all of her heart, and the other one just likes me. Lily is also very close to Peter. He is a great girl dad, and an even better boy dad. I had to learn to deal with my jealousy over Peter. He was a better parent than I was, without trying half of what I tried. It was natural to him, and I wish I could be that great with the kids. Even with our eventual conflicts, we were a good family. I didn't have the hots for Peter anymore and didn't feel head over heels with him, but we still had a lot of fun with our kids, and I cherished that. With the years, it was like I didn't have a husband anymore, just a best friend I raised kids with. I never really saw the distance between us as a problem. We were raising a family while working at the same time. It made sense that our relationship was being neglected. Peter didn't seem to care either. At a certain point, I wondered if he was having an affair, but disconsidered that after an unethical investigation of his privacy, which he'll never hear about. He was just fine with the distance in our relationship. I was a 35-year-old woman settling for a boring and inexistent sexual life. Once, we had a very awkward conversation about it. That situation stuck in my mind as the start of chaos. It was our last anniversary together. We had dinner at a famous restaurant downtown and came home after it. It was a regular weekday, but the kids were with my parents, so that we could at least have some alone time. Peter and I got home around 10 o'clock. He walked into our house yawning and saying he'd go to sleep because of an early meeting. I tried my best to seduce him that night. I was wearing a beautiful and tight dress. I couldn't look better. He acknowledged it and complimented me the entire night, which I appreciated, but wanted more than that. I literally threw him against the wall and kissed, and he simply pushed me away softly and said, "Sorry, babe, not today." I freaked out more than I should have. I confronted him about all of our unspoken problems. I asked him if he didn't desire me anymore, and why he acted as if that was normal. He didn't want to be with me in the day of our anniversary, so I felt hurt. He reacted calmly to what I was basically accusing him of. Since we were always so busy, he didn't realize how much of a problem it was. He promised me he'd try harder to improve our romance, but he said it with an expression of, "I know something you don't." "Hey babe, do you think if we spend some time away from each other, things might change?" I reacted weirdly to that question, assuming he was asking for the unfamous break. But when he proceeded to explain, it made more sense. "The finance director from our headquarters in Chicago quit. My boss wants me to stay there for a month to train the new guy. I'd have to go at the beginning of next month, but I just told him I'd have to check with you, since I can't just leave my family. For some reason, I would spend a month away." While Peter explained what his boss asked of him, I pictured my routine with the kids and all we'd do while Peter was away. I knew it would be hard dealing with their routine alone while working, but I was excited thinking about our quality time. I felt bad for being happy with his absence, so I obviously didn't let him notice it. I told him we'd be okay if he traveled and that we'd call him every day. It was work, his boss asked, so he had to do it, I also said. Peter seemed relieved seeing I was fine with the news, so either way, we were both fine after that conversation. A couple of days after Peter told me about Chicago, he told the kids. They were sad about the news. Lucas said he would call every day, and Lily said she would make a lot of drawings to give him when he returned. The next day, during breakfast, Lucas questioned me about the trip. On some mornings, Peter left early, and I had breakfast with the kids without him. It was one of those days. "Is Dad going to live in Chicago now? Is he leaving us?" Lucas asked while eating his cereal. I laughed with the sudden question. "Of course not, kid. He told you guys it would only be a month, remember?" "Yes, but parents usually lie about these things. I know what divorce is. You can tell me if you are." It was funny hearing him talk like a grown-up. "Your dad and I aren't getting a divorce, don't worry." "Okay then. If you were, I would want to live with Dad, but I'd still miss you, Mom." I didn't feel very reassured with what my son said, so I just answered him, "You know there aren't ice cream negotiations with Dad." While he picked up his finished cereal bowl from the table, he said, "That's true. I will think about my choice then." "We are still not getting a divorce." I laughed, and while leaving the kitchen, Lucas said, "You never know." A few months before Lucas started having a lot of relationship and divorce questions, a lot of his friends had divorced parents or parents going through a divorce, so he assumed Peter and I would too. The day came when Peter left for Chicago. The kids cried a lot, and he reassured them he'd be back before they even noticed. Our first week without him was a little crazy, since I was doing everything Peter did plus what I did during the morning. I realized during it that I could never be a single parent. Friday came and finally the end of the week. It was a bit exhausting, but we didn't have many problems. I was feeling good being able to take care of the kids alone and doing a great job at it. The three of us were having breakfast when our house's bell rang. Lucas ran to check our gate's camera and yelled that Josh, Peter's best friend, was here. I told my son he could open the gate, and he clicked on the screen to open the gate, the best thing we ever bought for our house. Josh worked in the same company as Peter. He was a lawyer there and worked on similar departments. We always saw him. Our kids liked him a lot because of the cool gifts Josh gives them on their birthdays. He showed up with a smile on his face, a box of donuts, and 2 cups of coffee. He got in and said hello to all of us, then explained why he was there. "I brought a sweet treat for the kids. Is that okay, Mom?" He looked for my approval before putting it on the table. "Sure, just don't tell their dad." I laughed. "Dad only lets us eat candy on weekends. It's sad," Lucas said with his eyes shining, looking at the chocolate frosting donut. Josh laughed and sipped his coffee. brought something for the adults, too. He handed me the other cup of coffee, and I thanked him. I was thinking I could take the kids to school. Maybe you need a hand here since Peter is in Chicago? I promised I'd keep a look at you guys. That would actually be great, but my parents take them to school on Fridays. They signed up for a cooking class close to their school. They should be here any minute. I was surprised with Josh's help. I always liked him, but in that moment some sparkle came up and drove me right to him. Oh, really? Sorry, I didn't know. Well, I'll stick around until my work time. Is there something you need? I didn't have time to answer, since our bell rang again, and the kids left the kitchen yelling for their grandparents. Brush your teeth and pick up your bags, I said, standing on the kitchen door. They are great kids, Josh commented while drinking his coffee, which made me drink mine too. Yeah, now they'll realize how Peter is the best at this parenting job. I joked, and Josh asked how my week was going. I absolutely hate cooking, but we are having great quality time even with my super busy routine. Well, Helen, don't hesitate to call me when you need some help during this month. I'm sure Peter would hate to know you got too much on your back while he is away. Also, I have an hour until I have to get to the office. Need anything? I repeatedly answered. He didn't have to do that, but after a lot of insisting, I remembered Lucas's closet door was broken and needed a few screws. He immediately made his way to the garage where he already knew it was where Peter kept his tools. He went up to my son's room and left me alone with my mind and my coffee. I wondered if Peter asked him to show up and see how I was doing. It was probably why he was there. I started overthinking in my living room. I looked at the time on my phone and realized I still had a few hours. On Fridays, I get to work a little later in the morning, so I got the idea to go talk to Josh and see what he knows about Peter, and especially if he knows anything I don't. Josh, can I ask you a question? I walked into Lucas's room and asked while he fixed the closet's door, which my son broke trying to get on it, literally. He made a positive sign with his head, and I went on. Please answer honestly. Do you think Peter is cheating on me? He laughed. God, Helen, where is this coming from? Of course not, he's all goofy about you. He seemed genuine about it. It actually seemed like a shock to him. Well, so what does he say about me? Josh looks at me with a face of regret for offering help. I don't know. We don't talk much about really personal stuff, only when we're drunk. When your birthday is close, he always blabs about what he is planning for you. But I don't really care, so I don't pay attention to it. Do you think he could be gay? Josh looked at me thinking it was a joke, but changed his expression when he realized I was for real. Helen, why are you asking me this? Is something wrong with you and Peter? There is, but I can't discuss it with you. Come on, girl, I got you coffee. Now you spill it. He makes me laugh and take a deep breath, deciding if I wanted to tell him or not. It's just that we don't, you know. I do? He looks at me confused, still not understanding. Well, let's say my husband isn't really interested in me like ever. He thinks for a while and looks at me surprised. Seriously? Why? Is he crazy? That's what I think. I thought he could be cheating on me with a 20-year-old, but I actually think he is too good to do that. So I guess the problem is actually me. I felt frustrated not being able to get anywhere with what Josh knew. Look at you, the problem is him. He got up and threw the tools he used back on the box. I'm done here. I thanked Josh and apologized for talking about that with him. He said he didn't care and asked where he could wash his hand. While he did that, I got downstairs back to the kitchen while reflecting about my situation with Peter. I was leaned against the counter. Josh walked back in the kitchen while holding the suit he took off to fix the closet. He walked closely to me without saying a word. When I could hear his breath, Josh said, "Is there anything else I can give you a hand on?" I looked at him, sensing a second intention. What? I asked as if he was crazy. Well, I'm here to fill Peter's spot for a month. That includes husband duties, right? What are husband duties? I asked, and couldn't hide my surprised reaction when he got on his knees and unbuttoned my pants. Let me show you, he said. Those were the best 30 minutes of my life. It had been such a long time since I felt all those shivering and euphoric feelings. Josh was a lifesaver. I went to work right after he left my house. God, I couldn't even process what had just happened. Could I consider that cheating, since we didn't actually do it? I thought repeatedly, but soon admitted it was, because I felt things I might have never felt with Peter. Not because of love or anything, Josh was just better at his skills, if you know what I mean. I was obsessing over during work that day, until I got a text message from Josh. If I were you, I'd ask your parents to have a sleepover with the kids and say you need time for yourself. That way, I can cook for you and have long hours of what happened today in your kitchen. He said all that, plus a smiley face. For some reason, the guilt couldn't get to me because Peter was in another city. I wouldn't even have to hide it. Why was cheating so easy? It made everything harder. As I enjoyed sabotaging myself, I called my mother and explained how tired I was from not having Peter around, and claimed I needed a long night of a bath and wine. She understood easily and said she'd be happy to have a sleepover with them. Saturday came, and I was a renewed woman. Josh spent the night in the morning. It was perfect. I was seated on the kitchen corner, wearing his shirt while he made breakfast. It felt like I was having a college fling. I was nostalgic. "What happened to that girl you took to Peter's birthday party? She was your girlfriend, right?" I asked after the woman came to my mind in the fold of memories I had of Josh. "Oh, slept with my friend Peter. Couldn't trust that woman even around my best friend," he said, laughing. I reacted seriously, and he kissed me, saying it was a joke he couldn't lose. "Actually, I broke up with her last month. It got boring, and I kind of like my single life." It was funny hearing that from my brand new affair. While being in the kitchen, I spent almost every day of my married life watching my husband cook. My affair with Josh went on until the 4th week without Peter. He'd stop by our house on the days I didn't have to leave so early, make breakfast for the kids, and take me to the bedroom as soon as he returned from taking them to school. I felt like I was taking advantage of him, but it felt so good I couldn't stop. On the last Saturday we spent without Peter, I was reading a book on my couch, and Lucas ran to me in his dinosaur pajamas, sat on the couch, and stared at me while I read. "What do you want?" I asked. "Why is Josh's phone here?" I looked at him confused and asked what he meant. "His phone has a Lego sticker on it. I always see it when he lets me put music in his car, but now it's here." "Oh yeah, he forgot it here. I already told him." I answered as if it wasn't a big deal. "In your bedroom?" Lucas made me freeze, but a lie magically came up in my head. He was fixing the bathroom sink and must have left it there. "But the last time Josh was here was Wednesday. It's when I had basketball practice. He drove me, remember? Is he taking that long to get his phone back?" At that moment, I hated how— "Oh my God, with the questions, Lucas. Let me read." I tried to end the subject. Lucas sighed and started talking again. "My friend Leo said his mom was having an affair with their gardener. I didn't know what affair was, and he told me. He said he always got gifts from the gardener. I don't want Josh to be my new dad." I stared at my son with a scared expression. "My love, just because Josh is around, it doesn't mean he is going to be your new dad. I'm not having an affair with him. He is just helping us out." "But you like him, don't you? When Dad was here, you showered after breakfast. When Josh is here, you shower before he gets here and even put makeup on." That little brat answered me and ended all of my comebacks. I sighed, looked at him angry, and asked what he wanted. "If you get me a new bike, I won't tell Dad." Lucas smiled mischievously. "Does the bike buy your silence forever?" I asked. He nodded and confirmed that it would. As the bad mother I was, the next day we got his bike. Peter would arrive on the next Monday at night. After I took the kids to school, Josh texted me asking if I wanted to have coffee with him. We got our breakfast to go and ate in the car, like any other people in an affair would. I told him about our potential snitch. "Let me know if something happens, but I'm sure it won't. Since we are at it, what happens with us after Peter comes back?" Josh looked at me kind of hopeful, but I was officially paranoid trying to imagine how I would look at my husband's face at night. I cheated on him for an entire month. Would I be able to hide it? The kids and I went to the airport to pick up their dad. They were so happy to see Peter. I cried when I saw him walking towards us. Seeing him made all of my screw-ups officially real. I missed him and felt bad for what I did at the same time. It was hard to keep the tears away. The worst part was realizing Peter was happy seeing me cry, because he thought things were finally right with us again. We had a family pizza night at our house. I felt like a spectator of a life which wasn't mine. Peter and the kids were laughing, having fun, talking, and I just sat there smiling at them. We had a moment of silence, which was ruined the worst way possible. Lucas got another slice of pizza and said naturally, "Dad, you should know that while you were gone, Mom's affair came over all the time. I looked at him angrier than I ever had been to my son. Peter looked at me confused, and Lily asked, "What's an affair?" To which Lucas answered, "It's when Mom or Dad kisses other people. My friend Leo's parents broke up because of that." He learned that information this week and convinced himself I'm having an affair with Josh because he came here sometimes to help us. I told you that isn't actually happening, Lucas. I stared at him with a death look, trying to remind him of his brand new bike. Mom bought me a new bike for me not to tell you. I don't think I'm good at keeping secrets. Peter was silent the entire time. He looked at me like he was burning inside. You made our kid lie for you? What is wrong with you, Helen? Babe, it's not what you think. Lucas was just confused and obsessed about affairs and divorces. I didn't want him to worry you with something that isn't even happening. I talked while I walked, because Peter got up from the table and started walking upstairs to our room at a speed I could barely keep up. Look at me, Helen. He suddenly stopped and turned to me. Look into my eyes and tell me you didn't sleep with Josh. Peter's sad eyes looked over me. As I tried to make visual contact with him, I realized I was physically unable to lie to him. Was all that left my mouth. Unbelievable. God, what the hell? How could you have done this? With the kids here even? Peter seemed angry, sad, upset, all at the same time. No, Peter. They were never here when it happened. They never saw or noticed anything. Lucas found Josh's phone. That's how he figured it, and you know your son. Yeah, I know my son. I apparently don't know my selfish bitch of a wife. I already told you I hated when you offered Lucas ice cream to do the dishes, and you bought him a bike for him not to tell me about your affair. What the hell is wrong with you, Helen? I couldn't even answer him. Get the hell out of here, now. He pointed to the stairs. Peter, please don't do this. Let's talk. I tried, but he just screamed at me, asking again for me to leave. I said goodbye to the kids while crying. My heart broke hearing Lily ask where I was going and hearing he cry too. I got in my car, texted Josh the words, "he knows," and drove off with no destination. I needed to find a hotel, but my mind just kept reliving the last minutes. I realized how much I had screwed up. Update. Hello, everyone. I posted here a couple of months ago about how my husband Peter found out I cheated on him because our son Lucas told him. I wrote the post a day after Peter kicked me out. 2 months have passed, and I have some crazy updates. Josh only texted me back 2 days after I left home. He simply said, "We need to talk ASAP." He parked in front of my hotel a few hours later. I got in and we talked without going anywhere. I noticed the huge black eye when I got in the car. When I asked him what happened, he just answered, "Who do you think?" I never thought Peter was capable of that. Terrible moment to find out something about my husband that turned me on. I thought about that a little, then Josh started talking. The company is sending me to Chicago. Peter convinced my boss to get me a permanent spot, and they simply informed me without being included in the discussion. I was shocked. Peter was definitely having his revenge. Can they even do that? Don't they need you here? I asked, to which Josh answered, I wish. If Peter wasn't the boss's favorite, I probably wouldn't have to go to goddamn Chicago. I hate that city. Listen to me, Helen. Peter is probably going to want to take the kids from you. Don't worry. I didn't hear or know if he said anything about it, but I want you to be safe. This guy went to college with me. He handed over a card with the number and name of a lawyer. He is the best divorce lawyer I know, especially when there are kids involved. I know you probably think you ruined your family with the affair, but the kids are still yours. Don't let him take them away from you for revenge. I have to go now. I have a big move ahead of me. I held the card while watching Josh drive away. God, what a mess I was in. Turns out Josh was right. Peter wanted full custody of the kids. We went to court to fight over it. We both had great lawyers, but Peter was responsible enough to realize how much that could affect our children, so he gave up fighting me for their sake. He settled for joint custody, but without looking or talking to me even for a second. We share the kids equally, and we are all still trying to figure out how this will go. All I have to say to you is, please don't screw your marriage, especially with kids involved. I regret my decisions. It was the worst thing I have ever done, and am still trying to figure it out completely. Thanks for reading. I hope you take this as a lesson for you not to screw up like I did.